William stood beside Camilla at the coronation. He smiled for the cameras. He played the role the nation expected him to play. But behind that public composure, a very different story has continued to follow the royal family for years. And according to royal biographer Angela Levin, William has reportedly told his children that they have two grandfathers, but only one grandmother. That single statement says more than 100 official palace press releases ever could. Because this story is not just about ceremony, titles, or tradition. It is about memory. It is about loyalty. It is about Diana. And it is about the woman many believe spent years not simply entering the royal family, but gradually rewriting its emotional history. The sources behind this discussion include NPR, Tina Brown's The Palace Papers, royal reporting over the years, and Prince Harry's own words. Together, they point to a pattern that critics say cannot be ignored. A pattern involving broken promises, altered heirlooms, disputed symbolism, private wounds, and calculated public image. Today, we're covering 15 acts from shattered promises to repurposed treasures, from quiet humiliation to unmistakable power. Plays the palace still seems desperate to soften, deflect, or bury. And stay with me, because number 9 involves a gift from Diana's wedding day, something so personal, so symbolic, that once you hear what happened to it, you may never see it the same way again. And number 14, even some of Camilla's defenders seem to fall silent there. Because when you hear what was allegedly weaponized and who it was framed to protect, you begin to understand why the consequences of all this may only be starting. And for anyone who still remembers Diana holding her boys' hands, shielding them from the chaos around them, protecting them with that unmistakable warmth only she had, this story hits differently. It all begins with a promise. Number 1, the broken promise. Back in 2005, when Charles married Camilla, Clarence House made a promise to the British public. The message was clear. When Charles eventually became king, Camilla would be known as Princess Consort, not Queen. That was the arrangement. That was the compromise. That was, for many, the emotional price of acceptance after everything that had happened in Diana's marriage. The message was meant to reassure the nation that some lines would not be crossed, that there would be limits, that however far the institution moved forward, Diana's place in history would not be casually overwritten. But promises inside palaces often have a way of quietly dissolving. By February 2022, Queen Elizabeth publicly expressed her wish for Camilla to be known as Queen Consort. And then by April 2023, even the word consort had quietly disappeared from the coronation invitation. No great public reckoning, no serious consultation, no national explanation, no apology, just a gradual shift in language until the original promise had effectively vanished. NPR quoted University of New Hampshire professor Nicoletta Gulles, who said she was surprised to see Camilla announced simply as Queen Camilla. Her interpretation was blunt. Charles had essentially pushed it through in order to make both of them appear more legitimate. And when you step back, the progression is striking. First, Duchess of Cornwall, then Queen Consort, then simply Queen. 3 steps, 3 upgrades, each one moving further away from what the public had originally been told. Each one, critics would argue, taking more than was ever agreed, and each one widening the distance between official royal messaging and the emotional reality many people still associate with Diana. But that was only the title on paper. Because paper can be rewritten. Memory is harder. And what came next was not just about titles. It was about symbolism and about wearing what Diana had once been denied. Number 2, refusing Diana's title, then taking Diana's crown. When Camilla married Charles in 2005, she was legally entitled to use one of the most famous titles in royal history, Princess of Wales. Diana's title, the title the world had come to associate with one woman, and one woman alone. And yet Camilla did not use it. Why? Because the backlash would have been immediate, the anger too raw, Diana's memory too powerful, the public attachment too deep. Royal historian Marlene Koenig has spoken about the sensitivity around this issue, and it was obvious at the time that claiming the title of Princess of Wales would have been politically disastrous. So instead, Camilla became Duchess of Cornwall. That choice told the world something important. There were still some symbols too sacred, too emotionally charged, too bound to Diana to touch. But then came the question of the crown. And this is where the contradiction becomes impossible to ignore. Because the same institution that understood Princess of Wales was too inflammatory somehow found a way, years later, to norm. Malay's queen. Diana was told directly that she would never be queen. Charles said it. Palace reporting reinforced it. She was the mother of the future king, the most beloved woman in the monarchy, the woman who transformed royal visibility around the world. And still, she died without ever being allowed to wear the crown that should have seemed within reach. And now the woman widely blamed for helping destroy that marriage wears it. Not occasionally, not ceremonially in passing. Daily. That contrast is what so many people cannot forgive. Because to them, this is not simply about legal succession. It is about emotional succession. And in that deeper sense, the wound never closed. Number 3, the Barbie Diana rejected and Camilla accepted. In March 2024, Camilla was presented at Buckingham Palace with a one-of-a-kind Barbie doll dressed in an outfit modeled after her own. She reportedly called it brilliant. On its own, that might seem harmless, a light cultural moment, a novelty, a tribute. But set against Diana's history, it lands very differently. Back in 1996, then-Mattel CEO Jill Barrett reportedly offered Princess Diana the chance to have her own collectible Barbie. Diana refused. She did not want her image turned into a mass-market doll. She did not want the meaning of her public identity cheapened in that way. Even after Diana's death, Mattel reportedly tried again through her sister, Lady Sarah McCorquodale. And again, the answer was effectively no. Her family wanted to protect the dignity of her image. That matters, because it reveals something about standards, about instinct, about how Diana and those closest to her viewed the line between public admiration and commercialization. So when Camilla later accepted a Barbie made in her likeness and received praise for it as though it were some empowering cultural achievement, critics saw something else entirely. Social media was brutal. Comments mocked it as a villain collection, called it Mistress Barbie, and ridiculed the idea that someone with such a controversial history should be presented as aspirational. And underneath the sarcasm was a sharper point. Diana said no because she had boundaries. Her family defended those boundaries after her death. Camilla said yes and smiled. 3 acts in, and already the pattern is beginning to emerge. Because what starts as symbolism soon moves into something much more personal. You've seen the titles, you've seen the image making. Now we move to actual possessions, actual spaces, actual pieces of royal history. And it gets worse. Number 4, the coronation crown. For the May 2023 coronation, Camilla wore Queen Mary's 1911 crown, reset with the Cullinan diamonds from Queen Elizabeth II's personal collection. Buckingham Palace framed the decision as a gesture of sustainability. But critics heard something colder in that explanation. Queen Elizabeth had worn those diamonds as brooches for decades. They were not random decorative pieces lying unused in storage. They were personal selections, intimate parts of her jewelry collection, worn with consistency and care across a reign defined by discipline and symbolism. And then they were removed from their settings and mounted onto Camilla's coronation crown. Historian Danielle Stacy and others have noted the colonial baggage surrounding some of these stones, particularly the Cullinan diamonds. That debate exists in its own right. But emotionally, another layer disturbed many observers. Elizabeth had preserved these jewels in one form for decades, and Camilla repurposed them for one of the most image-heavy mornings of her life. For many people, that did not feel like sustainability. It felt like extraction. Elizabeth wore those diamonds with restraint. Camilla wore them as transformation. And to critics, that was the whole problem. Because this wasn't merely about inheriting a role. It increasingly looked like refashioning the symbols of others, one crown, one title, one object at a time, until the past itself became a prop in someone else's narrative. But the next item is even more intimate, because it is not about crowns or diamonds. It is about a room, a child's room. And if you want to understand why, according to Angela Levin, William may never truly have accepted Camilla as family, this may help explain it. Number 5. Turning Harry's bedroom into a dressing room. In Spare, Prince Harry revealed that after he moved out, Camilla had his bedroom converted into her personal dressing room. His reaction, in his own words, was simple and devastating. "I tried not to care, but especially the first time I saw it, I cared." Pause on that. A boy loses his mother at 12. He grows up in that room. He carries grief through adolescence inside that space. And then the woman who became his father's wife turns it into a wardrobe. Tina Brown, in the Palace Papers, reinforced the broader pattern, writing that similar tensions around space and emotional symbolism exist elsewhere, including at Highgrove. And that is what makes this so striking. Clarence's house had multiple rooms. Highgrove had multiple rooms. There were other options, other choices, other spaces that could have served the same practical purpose. But out of all of them, Harry's room became the one. The room where Diana's youngest son slept. The room where he grieved. The room where memories of his mother still lived in the air. And for many people, that decision felt less like logistics and more like a message. Diana tucked him into that room. She read to him there. She protected him there. That space belonged, emotionally, to a child she loved fiercely. And then it was repurposed into a place for clothing and accessories. To some, that may sound small. To others, it tells you everything. Because Diana was not just their mother. She was their safe place. Anyone who remembers those photographs, Diana kneeling beside them, whispering to them, holding their hands at public events, shielding them from institutional coldness with her own warmth, understands why this particular detail continues to sting. This was not about furniture. It was about replacement. And we are only 5 entries in. That wedding day gift I mentioned at number 9, the one Charlotte will never see the same way, is still coming. And once you hear it, the line between insensitivity and erasure becomes impossible to ignore. Number 6. Wearing Princess Eugenie's wedding tiara. In November 2025, Camilla attended the diplomatic corps reception at Windsor Castle, wearing the Greville Emerald Kokoschnik tiara, the same tiara Princess Eugenie wore on her wedding day in 2018. That mattered because, until then, Eugenie had been the only royal to wear it publicly. That made it special, personal, singular. A wedding tiara is never just jewelry. In royal life, it becomes part of a woman's memory, part of the visual language of one of the most important days of her life. For Eugenie, that tiara was tied to a day that belonged to her. Then Camilla wore it. And the timing drew even more attention because it happened amid renewed scrutiny around Prince Andrew and Epstein-related reporting. Some royal commentators, including outlets such as Royal Observer, suggested that by reviving symbols connected to Andrew's branch of the family during such a sensitive period, the The monarchy was ensuring that public debate would continue. Whatever the intention, the effect was unmistakable. Something once uniquely associated with Eugenie was no longer exclusively hers. And that is the criticism again and again. Camilla does not merely step into roles, she absorbs symbols. Diana understood better than almost anyone that jewelry in royal life is never neutral. It is language. When Diana wore the Cambridge Lover's Knot tiara, it communicated history, elegance, and sometimes even emotional defiance. When she stepped out in the revenge dress, with no tiara at all, she delivered one of the most unforgettable visual statements in modern royal history. Diana used fashion and jewels to express truth. Critics say Camilla uses them to mark territory. Number 7. Raiding Queen Elizabeth's jewelry vault. Since becoming queen, Camilla has repeatedly appeared in pieces Queen Elizabeth either wore rarely or had not worn publicly in years. Among the items cited by royal watchers are pieces such as Queen Alexandra's Kokoshnik tiara, aquamarine jewels associated with Elizabeth, and brooches tied to older generations of the monarchy that had spent decades largely out of circulation. Commentators at outlets like Right Royalty argued that Camilla was effectively blowing apart the unspoken rules of royal jewelry etiquette. And the criticism goes beyond taste. Elizabeth's use of jewelry was defined by restraint, by continuity, by repetition. She wore the same brooches across decades because she understood what repetition signaled: steadiness, service, memory, duty. She did not need novelty to validate her status. Camilla, by contrast, is often accused of treating the vault like a costume archive, bringing out piece after piece, event after event, as though inheritance were something to be displayed through variety rather than honored through restraint. To critics, that difference is the whole story. Elizabeth's jewelry choices said, "I serve, I endure, I remain constant." Camilla's choices, they argue, say something else. "I can wear this now because it is mine now." And that shift from stewardship to possession is exactly why the backlash remains so emotionally charged. 7 acts down. And if it already feels like the evidence is stacking toward a conclusion, that is because it is. But the next phase takes all of this from private resentment into public visibility. From symbolism to spectacle. Number 8. The Trooping the Color face. During Trooping the Color in June 2025, Camilla rode beside Charles in full public view. And the footage spread quickly. What many viewers saw was a cue. Ewing, who looked visibly bored, sour-faced, unenthused, and only half-engaged with the moment. Her expression became the story. The online reaction was savage. One commenter wrote, "That grumpy face says it all." Another said, "I've never seen anyone look more like a cartoon villain." Harsh, absolutely, but revealing. Because royal popularity is not built only through duty. It is built through performance of gratitude, through visible investment in ritual, through the ability to make even the most repetitive ceremonial event feel meaningful to the public watching. And that day, many people felt Camilla failed. Meanwhile, Catherine and Charlotte appeared radiant. Lady Louise drew praise. The contrast was impossible to miss. Polling around that period, including YouGov figures often cited in royal commentary, showed Camilla's popularity still lagging well behind the monarchy's more admired figures. And that is what critics seized on. After decades of struggle, scandal, image repair, strategic positioning, and eventual elevation to the crown, she finally had what she wanted and still did not look grateful for it. Diana, by contrast, lit up public events even when her private life was falling apart. That is what people remember. The smile, the warmth, the visible effort, the discipline. She gave the public dignity even when she herself was being denied it. Duty, grace, gratitude. On that afternoon, Critics say Camilla managed none of the three. And now we arrive at the item that has haunted this entire list from the beginning. The wedding day gift. The one that, for many, crosses from appropriation into something much darker. Number 9. Turning Diana's wedding necklace into a brooch. This is the one. The item I told you about from the first lines of this video. The gift from Diana's wedding day. The piece Charlotte will never inherit in the same emotional form. The act many critics view not as borrowing, not as tribute, but as destruction disguised as repurposing. Diana's Prince of Wales feathers necklace was given to her by the Queen Mother on her wedding day. It featured white diamonds, a central cabochon emerald, and the iconic three-feather design associated with the Prince of Wales emblem. After Diana's death, it returned to the royal collection. And then Camilla had it refashioned into a brooch. She was first photographed wearing the altered piece in 2006, and since then has worn it on several occasions, including major public events, as though it were simply another jewel in regular rotation. Let that sink in. She did not merely wear Diana's necklace. She had it physically changed, taken apart, reworked, rendered permanently different from the way Diana wore it. That is what makes this so painful to so many people. Because once an heirloom like that is altered, the original emotional artifact is gone. Charlotte can never see it as Diana wore it. The public can never remember it in its intact form without also remembering what was done to it. This is not temporary use. It is irreversible intervention. Anyone who remembers Diana under gala lights, wearing that necklace with effortless radiance, understands why this feels so personal. She gave that piece life. She turned it into memory. And now that memory has been physically re-engineered by the woman so often accused of taking everything else first. To critics, this is not styling. It is erasure. Not lost, not misplaced, not archived. Changed by choice. And if everything before felt like evidence, this is the point where many people feel the emotional verdict is already in. But there are still 6 acts left, and some of them cut even closer to Diana through the people she loved most. Number 10, holding the highest title while doing less work. This one is less emotional, but in some ways even harder to dismiss because it comes down to numbers. According to the court circular, Camilla carried out 182 engagements in 2024, placing her below several other senior royals in workload. Princess Anne reportedly completed 474. The Duke of Gloucester in his 80s completed 216. In 2025, Camilla's total reportedly rose to 228, but she still remained behind figures such as Princess Anne, Prince Edward, and Sophie. And that is where critics draw the contrast. She carries the title Queen, but she does not carry the workload many believe should accompany that title. Others do more, with less glory, less protection, fewer headlines, and none of the ceremonial elevation. Princess Anne, especially, has long embodied the opposite of spectacle: relentless, disciplined work without complaint. And then there is Diana, who once walked through an active minefield in Angola, reshaping the global conversation around landmines with one act of visible courage. That is the difference, critics say, between service and presentation, between duty and image. 10 down, 5 to go. And now the list becomes less about possessions and titles, and more about character. Because what T comes next is not about what Camilla took. It is about who she hurt. Number 11, can't we get away from all this protocol? Royal author Tom Quinn in Yes, Ma'am, reported that Camilla was recalled by staff as saying things like, "Can't we get away from all this protocol? It's all bollocks." According to Quinn, Charles' response was effectively, "You're going to do it for me, darling." Now, on one level, this can be read as human frustration. Protocol is rigid. Royal life is repetitive. The institution can be absurdly formal. But the comparison critics make is devastating. Queen Elizabeth lived inside that system from the age of 25 until her death at 96. 70 years of discipline, 70 years of protocol, and not once did she build a public identity around complaining about it. Diana, too, did not complain that the rules were silly. Her anguish was deeper than that. She complained that she had not been helped, that she had been abandoned emotionally, that no one had shown her how to survive in that world. Those are not the same complaints. One speaks to inconvenience. The other speaks to suffering. And that distinction matters, because it tells you something about who experienced royal life as an unbearable emotional burden, and who, critics say, experienced it mainly as an irritation. And what allegedly came next, involving a grieving teenage William, may be the clearest revelation of all. Number 12. Allegedly leaking William's private conversation. In Spare, Prince Harry alleges that after Camilla's first meaningful interaction with William, who was still a grieving teenager, details from that private conversation appeared in the press. Harry later repeated similar concerns in his interview with Anderson Cooper on CBS's 60 Minutes, describing Camilla as dangerous because of the connections she was building with the British press and the willingness, as he framed it, on both sides to trade information. That allegation is explosive for one reason above all others. William was not just a prince in that moment. He was a son who had buried his mother. A 16-year-old boy grieving the most public loss imaginable. And according to Harry's account, private emotional material from that fragile moment became part of a media transaction. If true, that would explain a great deal. It would explain distance. It would explain distrust. It would explain why some wounds never healed. William has never spoken publicly in the same way Harry has, but every time he honors Diana, every time he credits her for shaping the man he became, every time her memory is clearly placed at the center of his emotional history, many observers see continuity. They see a son who never forgot where love came from and never forgot where betrayal may have entered. Anyone who remembers Diana's panorama interview remembers the atmosphere of it. The trembling hands, the steel in the voice, the unbearable loneliness of someone speaking truth from inside an institution that had already isolated her. If Harry's allegation is true, then William learned that lesson, the lesson of betrayal from inside palace walls at 16. And from there, the symbolism becomes even larger. Because the next act was not private at all. It happened in Westminster Abbey, in front of the world. Number 13. The double coronation power statement. The May 2023 ceremony was formally titled the Coronation of Their Majesties, King Charles III and Queen Camilla. That wording mattered. MSNBC and other commentators noted that the event functioned in many ways like a double-billed coronation designed to emphasize partnership and legitimacy. Camilla was anointed, crowned, and enthroned alongside Charles in a way that projected not simply spousal support, but near-equal ceremonial importance. And critics immediately compared that to Prince Philip. Philip served beside Elizabeth for 69 years. He was never crowned in the same way. He did not receive a mirrored coronation identity. He spent decades walking behind the monarch, understanding that consort status did not mean equal billing. He accepted the hierarchy of the institution. Camilla, critics argue, received something closer to shared spectacle after a fraction of the time. And then comes the emotional contrast that makes this sting. Diana never got the chance even to approach such a moment. The woman who would likely have filled Westminster Abbey with adoration and light never stood there in that role. The woman many blame for helping destroy her marriage did. That for critics is not merely irony. It is historical insult with velvet gloves on. 13 acts down, 2 remain. And these final 2 are not just about arrogance, ambition, or optics. They are about legacy, about how the past is rewritten, and about whether the monarchy can truly bury Diana's memory while her sons are still alive to remember everything. Number 14. Weaponizing charity in Andrew's title crisis. By October 2025, royal insiders were reporting that Camilla had been influential in efforts surrounding Prince Andrew's loss of status, including discussions over the Duke of York title. The argument presented in some reporting was that Andrew's ongoing scandals undermined the work Camilla was doing in support of victims of domestic violence and sexual abuse. Now let's be clear about one thing. Camilla's work in this area is real. She has supported causes that matter. That is not being denied. The criticism is about framing. Because Andrew deserved consequences on his own merits, because of the gravity of the scandal, because of the shame it brought, because of the victims, because accountability matters. But critics argue that when the issue was framed around how his presence compromised her work, her causes, her reputation, and her patronages, the moral center shifted. The focus moved from victims to image management. That is why this item unsettled even some who would normally defend her. Because once compassion becomes a strategic shield, people begin to ask where sincerity ends and leverage begins. Diana's humanitarian legacy casts a harsh light here. She touched AIDS patients when others still recoiled. She visited the sick and dying. She went to hospitals in private. She used her platform to lower fear, raise dignity, and bring attention to people the world preferred not to see. She did not, in the public imagination, use suffering to protect herself. She used her presence to protect others. That is the difference critics believe they can still see instantly. And it is exactly why the final item on this list may be the most dangerous one of all, not for Diana, but for Camilla. Because it concerns the one battle she may never fully win. Legacy. Number 15. Building her legacy while Diana's sons watch. Since 2023, Camilla has continued building an increasingly polished public profile. Patronages, foundations, literacy initiatives, advocacy work, institutional praise, media recognition, and carefully managed coverage presenting her as a serious, stabilizing royal woman of influence. She has become president, patron, founder, supporter, figurehead, the architecture of modern royal rehabilitation in full view. And yet for all of it, Diana remains everywhere. She remains in the statue at Kensington Palace. She remains in Charlotte Elizabeth Diana's name. She remains in William's public language whenever he speaks about compassion, homelessness, mental health, or service. She remains in Harry's grief. She remains in the public imagination in a way no PR operation has ever managed to erase. And according to Angela Levin, William has reportedly made sure his children know exactly who their true grandmother is. That matters more than any title. Because Camilla can reshape headlines. She can refine public messaging. She can accumulate patronages and soften coverage. She can spend years rebuilding her reputation. But what she cannot fully control is the memory held by Diana's sons. And that may be the deepest truth in all of this. Critics say Diana changed the world first, through heartbreak, courage, and instinctive humanity, and only afterward became immortal in public memory. Camilla, by contrast, is accused of reaching the crown first and then constructing the legacy afterward. That is the distinction her critics never stop returning to. One woman became beloved because she gave herself away. The other, they argue, is still trying to convince the world she deserves what she finally got. So when you look at these 15 acts together, the broken promise, the title shifts, the symbolic substitutions, the altered heirlooms, the bedroom conversion, the tiaras, the leaks, the ceremony, the optics, the repackaging, the attempted legacy building, a single question remains. Was this a woman who married into royalty? Or was this a woman who believed she had conquered it? Because William is Diana's son. And Diana's son remembers. He remembers who his mother was. He remembers what she suffered. He remembers what was taken. And perhaps most importantly, he remembers what should never have been touched in the first place. So the real question is not whether Camilla reached the top. The real question is what remains when the crown is no longer enough to silence memory. And when that day comes, what Camilla stands to lose may become a list even more devastating than the one you heard today.